A lot going on, a lot since we've had the opportunity to speak. Just want to make sure, I certainly want to recognize Jamie Samuelson and what he's going through. And obviously thinking of him and his family, the positivity that he continually comes across and puts out there is so inspirational. Obviously, we know what a great person Jamie is. So we're thinking of him and obviously saying a lot of prayers. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. A lot of changes here in the building. Certainly there's a lot of stuff to talk about there. I know Bob kind of talked a little bit about it the other day, so hopefully I can help fill in anything or questions. But certainly it is a day-by-day thing for us to go through and really try to look at what we're doing in the building. How do we keep it as safe as possible for everyone involved, players, staff, coaches, the people that work in the building. There's so much to talk about there. And certainly, we're excited to be back in and get going, excited to hopefully get to, something a little bit normal, even though we're in unnormal times. But, the team has been great. We've been on Zoom calls with them as they're kind of in the quarantine period here. But we're getting closer and we'll be there soon enough. So really from that aspect, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy and, continually just trying to do the right things. We're really preaching a lot of education here as far as COVID is concerned, and a lot of just information to everybody involved, the players, the coaches, the families, and just making sure that everyone understands, how serious we are taking everything and how much really, honestly, just want everybody to be safe. I want everybody to be safe and healthy, and no different than, where we were back in the spring through the summer. Now we're just kind of back at work, but we still need to be safe, understanding we're trying to protect not only everybody individually, but their families and our teammates and their families. So from that standpoint, I hope everybody on the call is doing well. I hope everybody is, safe and in good, good place. Hopefully you guys are excited to maybe get back to a little bit of football. Obviously it's exciting with the other professional sports that are kicking off here, and we're just as excited to get going. So I think after that, I'll just kind of, open it up. I hope everybody's good, but go ahead.
All right. First question, Justin.
Hey, Matt, your emphasis on practice, it's almost like you treat it as a sacred foundation to a quality football team. Everybody's in the same boat. The schedule is going to be shorter here, but just in terms of the virus and everything, how do you envision, I guess, practices happening, and how prepared do you think you'll be able to get your team for a regular season with this short schedule?
Yeah, great question. I love to practice. We all know that. So I think, in the NFL, it's something that we tell, philosophy-wise, tell the team in every year is that in the NFL, we only have 16 of these. We need to practice in order to get better. That's what's different than, some of the other major league sports. They can play games and get better through the course of games. We only have a limited amount of opportunities. So practice is a major concern. We're really trying to do everything we can to maximize that opportunity that we have to get out on the field. I think for us, it's really understanding that, from call it last Sunday or by the time we get in the building, we've had between 7 and 6 weeks before we get to that first game. There's going to be a process that's involved with that. It's really important for us to kind of maybe backtrack from the first game, from that Chicago game, and say, how do we maximize or put our performance at a peak level by the time we start the season, but also, stay healthy in that process and train and get everybody kind of caught back up from the time that we missed in the spring. So from that standpoint, just trying to put a plan together so that when we have that opportunity, based on the schedule that, everyone agreed upon, that when we get on the practice field in a true training camp practice schedule, that we can maximize everything we're doing. But certainly, the hard part is you get to this time of year and, you smell the fresh cut grass and you start to just get around it and you see the field's all painted up. The first thing we want to do is, get out there, throw the pads on and let's go practice. But we just got to be patient all the way through to make sure that, we're being safe. So a lot of adaptability here.
Okay, 20-man.
Kind of building on Justin's question, actually, the padded practices, I know you guys are limited and with no preseason games and then a max of just 14 padded practices. How tough is that for coaches? You've always preached that, look, to teach technique and some of the things that you want to do, it's important to have those pads on. And when you're limited in that regard, how tough is it on you guys as a coaching staff? And then what do you anticipate September football looking like, maybe, with so many limited padded practices to try to get these guys ready?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think, when I try to look at the big picture schedule, and certainly through training camp, and that's where our focus is right now. The interesting part is if you take out preseason games, which we did, and you kind of like buy back some of the time that we usually spend, whether it's traveling, the game itself, maybe post game, you actually pick up a couple extra days. And when you look at the training camp portion of the schedule, the ramp up period, and then when you get to that training camp practice schedule, we wind up with actually a lot of practice days. There's a lot of time in there for installations where in a lot of years we have, a certain amount of installs that we put in and a certain amount of practices. We actually wind up with a couple more days of practice. Now, that's also because we usually try to practice against another team. We try to do something in a competitive manner that way. We certainly will, miss those opportunities. But we're just going to try to stay positive and maximize that time that we do have, when we can put the pads on. I think one of the things that, you just have to be careful of, even though there's a set amount of days that we can be in pads, we're going to have to really take the flow of the team and evaluate it as we go and see where everybody's at, because you certainly don't want to put your team in a situation where, you have the pads on maybe a day where you should have maybe taken them off and given the team a little bit of a break before you get back to a real game. So kind of navigating that will be a little bit different, more so because you don't have those preseason games to judge, the markers of that. The team can get sore, can get beat up, and you want to do a good job of evaluating that. I think the big thing for me, I always talk about with pads, is really training camp. You're going to get your work in. That's the best. But as you go through the season, I think that's where I really crave more of that ability to put the pads on it and just maintain the fundamental work that you build during training camp.
All right, Chris Burke.
Hey, Matt, thanks for doing this. You kind of touched on it a little bit there, but, a lot of focus on the pandemic, rightfully so, but in a normal year, you're dealing with a lot of injuries in training camp anyway. And it sounds like it's going to be a lot harder to bring in guys and sort of turn over the back of the roster this year. So other than, the acclimation period, the ramp up period, are there steps you guys are putting in place to make sure that you get through to week one healthy from a football standpoint, apart from the coronavirus?
Yeah, it's a great comment, especially the part about being able to bring in new players. I think that's an outstanding point. From there's now a protocol to even get a guy to get on the field, and there's an amount of days that are going to take place before that player that you're trying to bring on board can get out there with everybody else. And in some accord, the player that might be injured might be back by then, just depending on the injury itself. So we're going to have to navigate that as it comes. But I think one of the things that will be critical for us is really taking the ramp-up period and taking the advice that the league and that the PA has put in place and try to understand the guidelines of what it's going to mean for us to build up to that point where we can practice, where we can be as healthy as possible. And I think also with some of the, wearable technology that we have that we are constantly learning about, really making sure that we do a good job with the feedback data that we're getting in regards to what does practice look like? What do the loads look like on the players? How much, are their bodies stressed right now, and the fatigue levels? And try to do a good job of adjusting as we go. It will be a completely different feel, and we know that, but that's okay. We just got to do a good job of always trying to just stay in front of it the best we can.
All right, Dave.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for doing this. 2 questions for you. First, just to follow up on those first 3, I guess. Can you walk us just a little bit through how practice will look different this year, like in meetings for that matter? I don't know, the Browns aren't huddling, the Seahawks aren't putting their quarterbacks in the same room for meetings. What special steps are you guys taking, in similar aspects, I guess? Yeah.
No, I mean, certainly, all of it I think is up for discussion and for change. And I would say in general for the COVID in the phrase right now that we're using is more is more. So for us trying to stay safe and protected, more is more. So as many things as we get when we get on the field in those settings, things that we have to do to keep everybody as separate as we can, we're going to try to do. The biggest thing for us, honestly, is just to get through, the first 14 days from when everybody reported. If you go kind of and get into the 10 to 14 day window of guys coming in and reporting, and when the virus can show up from, let's call it travel or some of those situations, I think the steps that we're trying to take initially here to keep the team as separate as possible is going to be the first step. So in a lot of cases, I think maybe you guys, talked to Bob about this before. We have 90 guys on the roster. We're going to stay with 90. I think that I just, really, we had an interesting spring, but we had a great spring from a standpoint. I felt the team and the players and the guys that are here, I just want to get them in the building and see what they can do, even though it may be for a short period. I felt it was, our right or our, obligation to the players to keep it at 90. So that being said, I think for us, what we're trying to do is put a build-up phase in before we put everybody together. And certainly by that point, at some point in camp, we'll be to 80. But basically what we're trying to do is put everybody in small groups for the first week and bring, maybe it's 20 guys to 25 guys through the building at a time, understanding that we do have to be patient before we get to that practice standpoint so that we kind of limit some of the crossover contact that the guys are going to have until we get through the different phases, and then build from 25 to 40, and then, from 40 try to get to 80, but really take, 4 to 5 days between that process where we put those groups together. And I think that's where we try to start. Certainly there's things like we've discussed in those small groups of trying to keep it as randomized as possible. You don't want to bring in like just all the offensive linemen and always have them working together because, if someone happens to have a sickness or get sick, then, that wipes out the entire group. So if you can space that out, very similar to what you mentioned with the quarterback situations, and trying to put the quarterbacks into different groups or anybody else from that matter, where, positionally you spread it out. And then, certainly when we get to training camp, there'll be things that we're going to look at as far as, well, what did we do in the first couple weeks and did it work? Trying to stay with as many virtual meetings as we feel we can, I think, is important. Trying to get the players in and out of the building, is important for us and get them back into, a quarantine setting where they are, safe and we limit the contact that they have. So those things are great. Being able not to huddle is certainly, we signal, you can signal, and put everybody in that manner anyway. So those things are things that you do normally in practice and are easily adaptable. I think it's the things that really trying to think outside the box to the best of our ability. Like, it's not real comfortable to know that, in the first phase one, at one given time, there's only going to be maybe 25 guys in the building at the time. Like, you want to get, 90 out there and get going. That's not normal. But for us, it's more important for everybody to feel safe and for everybody to kind of get through that acclimation period of those first 14 days. So, we just got to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
And then the second thing I wanted to ask you just real quick was I know you guys have always looked at it as more than a 53-man roster, like a 69-man roster really with practice squad included. But maybe you can just speak to that, how, this year maybe more than any will be about the 90 guys in camp now, a battle of attrition for the next, 5 months or 6 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's an outstanding point as far as, we like obviously the guys on the practice squad are guys that we think we can develop, but also guys that need to be ready to go play in games. I would say more so than ever, the amount of players that could be up and down between those two squads, practice squad and then the final roster, I think that'll be at a high level. So making sure that we do a really good job of evaluating the players that are here through training camp, but also coaching and teaching everybody to be ready to go so that we can keep those guys in that practice squad situation, but they're really, an extended part of the team ready to go, especially, think about, the possibilities when you get to the season, not that really you want to look that far, but, we have testing on a particular day before a game and something happens, everybody's got to be ready to go. And that's the way we have to look at it.
Mike Rothstein.
Hey, Matt, how are you? I got a couple questions as well. The first is, in kind of following up with that, have you and your staff already talked about the potential of maybe quarantining one or two players at every position just throughout the season to make sure you have certain guys available or at least have more theoretical protections around that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of great conversations, and I've had that with a lot of other head coaches and really even in college situations, college coaches. That's kind of I would say the interesting part of maybe through the course of the summer, the amount of communication that I think a lot of coaches have had with each other or organizations have had. Hey, what are you doing here and what are you doing there? I'd say it's all very fluid. I think certainly, on paper, it's great to say, hey, we'd like to quarantine this guy, and this guy. Well, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean the guy's not in the building all week? Does that mean he doesn't practice? Well, we certainly know in our game, you're not just going to be able to show up on Sunday and roll it out there and play if you're healthy and haven't taken any reps, and the first time you see some sort of different look or different scheme can't be on Sunday, so practice is important, and making sure that you're prepared is important. The question for us is, how can we use technology? How can we use different things that have come out to prepare maybe players that we will kind of keep a little bit off to the side or away from the group to make sure that they are prepared and ready to go. So that'll be a great challenge when we get to that phase. Right now for us, it's just trying to get everybody in the building through this weekend. That's really the short term, and stay day by day. What the rest of it looks like, we'll work through it when we get there. But I think those are great conversation pieces that everybody is thinking about. And the NFL announced J-Ron Kerr suspended for 3 games. How does that maybe affect what you initially thought? And it's not clear whether that's tied to his October arrest. Was that something you anticipated even when you signed him? Yeah, it was. We were aware of the situation in free agency. Obviously vetted the situation. We talked with J-Ron and felt comfortable with him in the situation. Obviously, have gotten to know him a lot more since free agency, and just felt comfortable with all of it. So we knew it was something that was coming, and then really right now, just like always, it's a league matter, and I'll just leave it at that. But it is something we were aware of during free agency. Thanks.
Got time for a few more. We'll go Ken Brown, Stets, Wojo, and Kyle.
Hey, good to see you, Coach.
Great to see you.
All right, 2 questions. First question, a year ago today, there was a big injury on the team when you started training camp, and that was you. So are you do you feel things you couldn't do last year that you'll be able to do this year? And number 2, no, I forgot number 2. Just answer number 1.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so I finally can stand, I finally can walk, I finally can get in the mix, maybe line up and get in a stance and hit somebody, and now I got to keep 6 feet distance. So I really think that there's something here that somebody's got with me right now. They're trying to keep me away from everybody. A difference of a year, it's good. I can walk stairs. Not that I do that regularly, but I could. And I don't necessarily have to be on a 4-wheeler to get through practice, although it is an option, which is pretty cool. So I'm doing all right. I appreciate that. The injury update, I'm still working through rehab. I haven't been able to rehab, obviously, with COVID. So I got a lot of work to do there. But I appreciate you asking.
That's
How you doing, Coach?
Awesome.
This year it's going to be so much different than any year in years past with the team and with you coaching and coaches in general. Normally, you know everything. You know what the players are on the roster. You know what the practices are. You know what injuries you have. But with COVID-19, it seems there's just so many unknowns heading your way. Not just you, but all coaches. I'm just wondering how that's weighed on you, because we're only a few days into camp and you have 7 guys on the reserve COVID-19 list. You could end up having a couple days before a game this season where all of a sudden you're missing 3 guys because they're on that list. So I'm just wondering how you kind of navigate that and how those challenges have weighed on you as a head coach, dealing with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously 100%, accurate in everything that you said. Think about a normal spring where, we're 4 weeks through an off-season program of practices and things like that. And we've probably had, in those 4 weeks, at least a dozen personnel conversations. And just evaluated what we've seen on the field, and we haven't even been able to do that yet. So those are certainly things that you think about, and you start to, as a head coach, you start to worry about, are we behind? Are we going to be, in a good situation? And then you just remind yourself, look, we control what we can control, and we'll do our best to evaluate it as we go through. We're all trying to figure out something different right now, and certainly, the roster and teaching the players is the most important thing, and making sure that, we get through this healthy. But I would say coming out of the spring, the feeling that I got with, everybody, even through virtual meetings and where this team is at and the type of guys that are on this team right now, I really haven't worried about any of that, because I know everyone is working extremely hard right now. I know everybody's ready to go, and we have some great guys on this team that'll help lead us through the different challenges we're going to see. So I'm excited for that. Actually, as a coach, it makes you feel better. It kind of actually just says, okay, look, they're going to handle a lot more of the things that they need to handle, and I know it's going to be at a high level, and I can just focus on the things that I can control and that I can do to help the team. So that's where we start. We'll take it, day by day as we go, but I just think, like all of us, we're just excited we can get to that point and get out there and get ready to go.
All right, let's go Wojo, then Kyle.
Matt, how are you? Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you. Obviously, the NFL can put in all the protocols they want, and the Lions as well, and all the education and guidelines. But it is going to come down to how the players, when they leave the bubble of the Allen Park facility, how they handle themselves. And we've seen that where some things have gone wrong in other sports in that regard. How do you even handle that, other than addressing it and emphasizing it and don't let your teammates down by getting sick or whatever? How do you emphasize that? Because that seems to be the great unknown right now.
Sure. I think you're exactly right. It is hard to, you can't control what people do when they leave the building, obviously, but you hope that through education and through, the commitment to everybody and just understanding that, we have very real conversations about what is COVID and how does it spread and how important it is to be diligent with your protection and with your health. And certainly, we've had meetings with our medical staff, with the players, our training staff, our coaches, players to players conversations where you just keep investing in each other and you keep understanding, that bond that we all have and how important it is more than ever that we take care of each other because, it's more than just taking care of each other. Now we're taking care of each other's families. And that's, a real conversation more so than even football. It's we all have different situations. We have kids. Maybe we have parents that live with us. We have people that are high risk based on all the different factors. And, certainly for us, the education piece and making sure that our players understand that, there is a range of how people feel about this, but, we have to hold it in the highest regard of making sure that we're all protected and that we're all safe. And, really honestly, we have good guys in this team. They do care. They do care about each other. They do care about people in general. And I think when you put it to them that way, sometimes it makes a lot of them just kind of step back and go, you know what, you're right. Let me make a good decision here. And let me think, make sure I'm thinking about the team and everybody else. So we just, the continual conversation, I think when we sit on a team call and, we listen to our doctors and they're talking to us about the disease and what they've seen with this virus and the situations that they've had to put themselves in, which are all very high risk every single day. And the unknown that's behind this, you feel that, all of that passion that comes through and says, hey, there's a lot at risk here. We probably should be a little bit more careful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kyle, last question.
Yeah, I've actually got two for you, Coach. The first is kind of a follow-up to Wojo's. You're talking about this education you have with the guys about COVID, and then you got Deshaun Hand, who this week shared a video that said COVID was a hoax. And I'm not really sure how much he knew about the video that he shared, but I was just curious what kind of conversations you've had with him and what you do with the guys just about being careful about the kinds of stuff they're consuming and sharing with each other.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Certainly in these times where, when we are quarantined or we're sitting around, there are a lot of things that I think everybody is kind of trying to take in from videos to articles and reading more. And I think that's all really good when it's on an educational wave. I think it's important for everybody to understand that, look, however we feel about it, we have to go to the maximum extremes of more is more, and we believe that. And so do our guys, and I think with Hand, he and I have had a conversation, and quite frankly, Deshaun Hand cares about people, and I think that maybe, probably should have saw everything that was involved with that. I think maybe that was just a little bit, that was not the intention, I think, of what he was trying to do. So great learning moment for everybody, right? Just a great opportunity for us to go back and teach the team and say, hey, look, let's just be diligent with everything we're doing and make sure that we're kind of understanding how that goes out.
And the last one real quick is JohnATkins. I missed the beginning of this call, so I apologize if you did talk about him, but what's the conversation you had with him and what did he say about his decision to opt out this year?
Yeah, that's a hard one to answer just because sometimes I think those conversations are really private, when people are talking about their own personal situations, whether it's health or family related or, other factors that maybe, weigh on them. I think, again, it's another great point to exactly what we're talking about, how real this virus is and how important it is for everybody to stay safe. And certainly from a standpoint of, making sure that we take care of everybody, including our family. And certainly, our families are the most important thing. And I know a lot of times in football that gets lost, but I think about it every single day, my wife and my kids, and a lot of our guys are in the same situations, or whether it's their parents or grandparents or whatever it might be. So 100% just have to respect everybody's feelings and opinions on trying to stay as safe as possible. Absolutely.